Prince William is reportedly considering taking a notable step regarding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and the move is said to be more significant than anything discussed before. Although nothing has been officially announced, information circulating from within the palace suggests that he may soon make an important decision about the royal title the couple continues to hold, even though they stepped away from their official royal responsibilities quite some time ago. Even though they had previously expressed their intention to step back from their official roles and no longer rely on certain royal privileges, Meghan Markle has still been noted using her HRH title, which has sparked questions about whether that promise will be fully honored. So how might Prince William choose to approach this situation moving forward? Let us know your thoughts. Leave a comment with a 1 if you understand this perspective, or a 0 if you see things differently. We'd love to hear from you. And remember to like and subscribe so you won't miss what happens next, as we continue uncovering the details behind this unfolding story. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry haven't just stirred controversy within the royal family. Their actions are also seen by some as directly affecting the institution and shaking public confidence in a system already sensitive to change. Behind closed doors, secret meetings took place, not only in the royal living rooms, but also in the shadowed halls of Parliament. The idea of revoking Meghan's title emerged as a decisive measure intended to protect the integrity of the monarchy. For the first time, many observers feel that British leadership is sending a clear message. This situation can no longer be ignored or tolerated. The Lords concluded that when a private citizen uses a royal title in a way that resembles international diplomacy, the consequences go far beyond media attention. They can impact national interests. And when those interests are at stake, the British Parliament is unlikely to remain passive. This trip didn't just irritate those in power, it provoked a reaction. It transformed quiet whispers into a clear statement. A line had been crossed, and the title of Duchess of Sussex could no longer be taken lightly. After all, royal titles are far more than decorative labels. They carry weight, responsibility, and significance within the system. Inside Westminster, through the ancient stone corridors that have witnessed wars, abdications, and centuries of political turmoil, quiet murmurs began to spread that something significant was about to unfold in the Senate. The walls of the world's oldest legislative chamber, walls that had remained steady through countless moments of triumph and crisis, now carried whispers unlike the usual political chatter. These rumors weren't about everyday debates or upcoming elections, but about a major shift that seemed to be approaching. The entire chamber, where centuries of tradition are woven into the oak benches and historic statutes, found itself anticipating a move unlike anything seen before. The stated goal of this petition, according to those discussing it, is to remove Meghan Markle's title as the Duchess of Sussex on a permanent basis. To many involved, this isn't seen as a small or symbolic gesture, and it's not just casual speculation either. This is how the system's concerns are being expressed, and the message feels unmistakably firm. Behind the scenes, senior figures describe the moment as one of the most significant since the so-called Mexit period. A portion of Parliament appears to have reached a breaking point, and the quiet whispers circulating through Westminster for months are now taking a more defined shape. Even though public reactions remain mixed, it's clear that the political debate surrounding this issue is growing more heated and more intense. From their point of view, Meghan appeared to be carrying out the duties of a royal representative without the formal authority or responsibilities that normally come with such a role. Images of her meeting with senior Nigerian officials spread across the world, creating the impression of official support that, according to critics, had never actually been granted. For those responsible for safeguarding the country's diplomatic boundaries, seeing a duchess function in a way that resembled an ambassador was enough to raise concern. That moment, more than any interview, public event, or brand partnership, became the turning point that set everything into motion. This title, once seen as a symbol of dignity and long-standing tradition, is now viewed by some as something being used in ways that blur its original purpose. Meghan's choices have led her down a different path, one that, according to commentators, has pushed both the royal family and the British government to confront a situation they had never expected to face. Few could have imagined that a royal title might one day spark debate in meeting rooms and even raise questions in legal discussions. With that realization, members of the House of Lords felt that delaying any further consideration was no longer an option. Many now believe that the royal media protocol has fallen behind the times compared to what modern nations typically follow. What began as quiet murmurs has now grown into a widely discussed topic, revealing a clear divide within Parliament. At this stage, it's no longer viewed as a simple disagreement over a title. Instead, it has become a firm and ongoing struggle, with each side standing solidly behind its own position. Some MPs continue to voice support for Meghan, saying she should keep her title based on what they see as her positive contributions. Meanwhile, many others argue that the actions of Meghan and Harry have diminished respect for the institution and created concerns about the royal family's public image. No government department responsible for state diplomacy was involved. Neither the palace nor the Foreign Office had been informed, consulted, or briefed about the trip. It went ahead as if the Sussexes still held official roles within the royal framework, as if their duties had somehow continued despite their formal departure. For members of the House of Lords, this wasn't just inappropriate, it was considered dangerous. Behind closed doors, the language was strong and unambiguous. An unauthorized diplomatic act, a potential threat to the neutrality of the monarchy, and a breach of constitutional expectations. For the first time, many within the British establishment aren't just frustrated. They appear ready to take real action. At that moment, one thing became unmistakably clear. This was no longer simply a disagreement between a family and two of its more independent members. It had evolved into what many now view as a national concern. The machinery of British influence began to move, and from the outside, it seemed to be shifting in a direction that worked against them. Here's what observers say truly unfolded. The royal family, the political sphere, and other influential groups across the country all understood that if the situation continued unchecked, the consequences might soon fall outside their control. Royal titles are not just ceremonial. They are constitutional instruments, safeguarded by laws that long predate the age of modern celebrity. When the Lords examined Meghan's public actions, they felt they were confronting the very legal core of the monarchy. The Royal Titles Act of 1917, a law enacted during World War I to prevent the misuse, commercialization, or personal exploitation of noble titles outside the monarchy's authority, suddenly became a central focus of the discussion. An official petition, written in the formal language of the Constitution, was formally entered into the records. This was no temporary draft or ordinary request. Presented to some of the highest-ranking members of government, the petition carried the weight of history and was crafted with careful attention, underscoring the seriousness of the matter. It wasn't merely a response to growing public debate. It was a legal maneuver with the potential to shift the course of events, forcing everyone to take a closer look at the power of royal titles and the ways in which they are being used. The House of Lords now faces a challenging decision. Either turn a blind eye to what some see as the growing misuse of noble titles, or enforce the laws that have defined royal identity for more than a century. For the first time in Meghan's public story, legal accountability is no longer just theoretical. One factor that seems to unite critics in Parliament is the expanding business enterprise built around the Sussex name. This isn't speculation or gossip, it's reflected in business filings, marketing materials, and international media contracts that clearly leverage the Duchess's title. It all began with the Netflix deal, a multi-million-dollar partnership that launched with a documentary featuring the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, not as a simple courtesy, not as a minor detail, but as the visual centerpiece of the opening frame, highlighted in the traditional royal font that immediately drew attention. For members of the Lords, this was far more than entertainment. It was a carefully crafted branding move. After that came Spotify, followed by Arkwell, each venture further building a commercial empire around the Sussex name. Then there was the attempt to register the Sussex royal trademark for global use, a step that some saw as turning a royal title into an international brand. If you want to understand how a modern royal family can transform nearly every public move into a branding strategy, be sure to leave a comment, hit like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you can follow these fascinating and dramatic stories with us every step of the way. Legal experts, those advising ministers rather than media outlets, quietly began suggesting that Meghan's public use of her Duchess title in connection with her media projects could be seen as a potential breach of that law. Once Parliament started examining whether the law had been properly followed, the discussion went far beyond ceremonial matters. It became a question of constitutional compliance. According to sources, this legal perspective formed the basis of the petition. While the trip to Nigeria had raised diplomatic concerns, it was the Royal Titles Act of 1917 that ultimately brought the legal dimension into the conversation. Prince William is reportedly considering taking a notable step regarding Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, and the move is said to be more significant than anything discussed before. Although nothing has been officially announced, information circulating from within the palace suggests that he may soon make an important decision about the royal title the couple continues to hold, even though they stepped away from their official royal responsibilities quite some time ago. Even though they had previously expressed their intention to step back from their official roles and no longer rely on certain royal privileges, Meghan Markle has still been noted using her HRH title, which has sparked questions about whether that promise will be fully honored. So how might Prince William choose to approach this situation moving forward? Let us know your thoughts. Leave a comment with a 1 if you understand this perspective, or a 0 if you see things differently. We'd love to hear from you. And remember to like and subscribe so you won't miss what happens next, as we continue uncovering the details behind this unfolding story. It was a move that Queen Elizabeth herself reportedly blocked after advisors warned that it could turn a royal title into a commercial brand. The petition laid out these activities in detail, framing them as a potential misuse of noble status for personal gain. From Parliament's perspective, this wasn't simply a case of royalty overlapping with a career. It appeared to be a deliberate strategy, a carefully calculated effort to shape the Sussex identity into a marketable brand, capable of generating revenue through documentaries, podcasts, interviews, merchandise, and broader influence. Her podcast episodes became key examples referenced in parliamentary discussions. In these episodes, she spoke about the royal family's treatment of her child, her struggles with mental health, claims of racism, and personal experiences that supported her independent projects. Each statement quickly reached far beyond the podcast's intended audience. Every episode made headlines, and every headline widened the gap between public perception and the royal family's silence. To the Lords, this was more than just media content. It was viewed as a potential violation of long-standing norms. The turning point, it seems, came all the way from Nigeria, thousands of miles away. The trip was officially presented as a private visit, yet it displayed all the hallmarks of a formal royal engagement. Meghan appeared alongside Harry in traditional attire, addressed audiences, posed for photos with senior military officials, and received honors that, by long-standing tradition, would normally require clearance from the palace or the Foreign Office. According to insiders, however, no such approval was ever granted. Meghan's move away from the royal family's direct oversight, crafting her own path with independent messaging and strategies, has raised a major question about power, control, and influence in a system where every action is carefully scrutinized. It's not simply about taking charge of her own life. Her actions have shifted the way the world sees the royal family, and that is something the House of Lords feels cannot be allowed to continue unchecked. They are beginning to recognize that if they fail to act swiftly, the consequence could be a significant erosion of authority beyond their control. They specifically pointed to the podcast as an example of a potential breach of long-standing rules that prevent members of the royal family from making statements that contradict the monarchy, embarrass the institution, or present personal stories as official fact. According to sources, the Lords described this as a global embarrassment, an affront to the institution by someone who still held a title meant to signify responsibility and service. In their view, Meghan had transformed private grievances into a form of public diplomacy, all without accountability, oversight, or formal approval. And Parliament, they felt, had grown increasingly frustrated with seeing long-standing traditions broken so publicly. Instead, what many observers saw were red carpets for celebrities, Hollywood contracts, and personal grievances dominating global headlines, all while a duchess lived thousands of miles away in Montecito, far removed from the crown yet still carrying its name. To the British public, the title appeared increasingly out of place. To Parliament, it seemed to have been turned into a tool or weapon. Taken together, these factors set the stage for an unprecedented decision, one that would transform this story from a matter of public controversy into a chapter of constitutional history. While the palace has remained largely silent and the royal family keeps its distance, the public has made its opinions known. A national YouGov poll revealed a notable shift in sentiment. 77% of the British public believe Meghan should be stripped of her title as the Duchess of Sussex. Support for this stance came from across the political spectrum, from conservatives and centrists to progressives. The poll also found that 61% felt Prince Harry should lose his title, particularly in light of his HR approach to public life. These results reportedly sent a stronger message to Westminster than any interview, documentary, or media statement ever could. The House of Lords, long seen as defenders of tradition and guardians of the royal family's integrity, has stepped into the space left by a silent monarchy and a duchess living abroad. If the petition succeeds, Meghan could face something no modern royal has ever encountered before. The removal of her noble title would not be a voluntary renunciation, nor a negotiable decision. It would be a legal erasure, enforced by law. The Duchess of Sussex may soon close a chapter, with her title rewritten and her appellation returned to the monarchy. This moment, this petition, this unprecedented action, carries significance far beyond Meghan Markle herself. The Lords understand a crucial point. If a royal title can be treated as a brand, it loses its meaning. If it can be used without responsibility, it loses its dignity. And if it can be commercialized, politicized, and turned into a global entertainment spectacle, the monarchy stands to lose far more than respect. It stands to lose power. Public opinion isn't just idle chatter or passing gossip. Public opinion generates pressure, and pressure often evolves into a mandate, A mandate, in turn, can drive decisive action. Behind the scenes, sources say the House of Lords quietly referenced this poll to justify their intervention, treating it as more than just numbers. It was interpreted as a national call to uphold tradition. They approached it not out of malice, but from a sense of duty and responsibility. The British public is sending a clear and undeniable message. The title no longer reflects the values of duty, loyalty, or service to the public that it was meant to embody. In the oldest chambers of power in England, beneath domes and glittering lights that have witnessed centuries of history, a petition now rests. A petition that could permanently end Meghan Markle's role as the Duchess of Sussex. This is no longer a personal dispute. It's no longer about character, reputation, or even royal politics. This has become a constitutional matter. What began as a quiet whisper, a subtle murmur echoing through the halls of Westminster, has now grown into a clear and resounding statement. It's a system specifically designed to prevent exactly what critics claim has occurred over the past 4 years. Unapproved narratives, uncontrolled messaging, and personal campaigns that draw attention away from the royal family itself. Meghan has repeatedly stepped outside that system, despite resistance from those who uphold the traditional principles of the monarchy. And each time she challenges these rules, it creates a ripple, not just through the media, but within the very system she appears to be challenging. Above all, this is something the House of Lords is determined not to ignore. Now the entire world watches quietly, with tension, as the future of the Duchess of Sussex title hangs by a thread. A duchess in California, a petition in Westminster, a monarchy that seems stalled, and a parliament steadily moving forward. This is the scene. This isn't the conclusion of the story. It's the threshold of the next chapter. A moment suspended between tradition and transformation, between silence and consequence. Once Parliament takes action, the world will see whether Meghan Markle's royal era is truly coming to an end, or if the royal family is preparing to redraw the boundaries between monarchy, celebrity, and power for generations to come. For centuries, royal titles have stood as symbols of tradition and authority. Under the House of Sussex, however, they began to be treated as assets. And when assets are used in ways seen as improper, the law comes into play. The law sparks petitions, and petitions bring real-world consequences. Inside Westminster, this chapter in Meghan's story is seen not simply as personal ambition, but as a kind of transformation. A duchess becomes a global entertainment figure, leveraging a title she was never meant to profit from. This dynamic doesn't just create tension within the royal family. It also fuels a quiet clash between the forces of traditional authority and the rising influence of modern celebrity culture. What do you think lies ahead for the Duchess of Sussex title? Will Meghan Markle continue to push boundaries and shape her own path, or will she face consequences that are impossible to avoid? We want to hear your opinion. Share it in the comments below. Type 1 if you empathize with Meghan and her choices, or 0 if you see the situation differently. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss updates on the most dramatic and fascinating stories involving the royal family, shifting centers of power, and the major changes that are shaping the world today. Thank you so much for watching, and we look forward to exploring these unfolding stories with you in the next video. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're stepping into a royal story that blends deep-rooted tradition with the mounting pressures of the modern world. King Charles III, leader of the British royal family, now finds himself at the center of a tense and complicated situation. Just as his summer retreat seemed to promise a brief moment of calm, a stark warning from a senior royal insider suddenly surfaces, sending events down a sudden and uncertain path. And this isn't just casual palace chatter, it's a powerful mix of warnings and shifting dynamics that could rattle the very core of the House of Windsor, affecting not only the present, but the future of the monarchy itself. Will King Charles take this advice to heart, or will he remain unshaken in the face of what lies ahead? What's your take? Drop a 1 the comments if this story speaks to you, or a 0 if you see it differently. And if you're not subscribed yet, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss more royal stories packed with unexpected twists in our upcoming videos. Andrew Looney's warnings are direct and uncompromising, stressing that King Charles must not allow the monarchy's reputation to suffer further damage in the early years of his reign. He speaks with clarity and urgency, highlighting the potential threats to the royal family's public image. In his remarks, he specifically named Prince Andrew, the king's younger brother, along with Sarah Ferguson, Andrew's former wife. Despite their divorce, Sarah Ferguson remains closely connected to the royal family and is often reported to stay at Royal Lodge. This only underscores the complexity of the situation, where their continued association could potentially create renewed turmoil for the monarchy. Looney did not hesitate to criticize this connection, warning that Sarah Ferguson's continued presence in royal life, even in an unofficial capacity, could have a serious impact on the monarchy's image. Fergie, despite her many charitable efforts, has also long been the subject of criticism and unfavorable headlines. Her close ties to the royal family, particularly to Prince Andrew, have raised ongoing concerns about the risk of future controversies that could place heavy pressure on the monarchy. Looney's warning is not centered solely on past missteps, but instead highlights the urgent need for the royal family to maintain a clear and formal distance from controversial figures in order to protect the stability and credibility of the monarchy moving forward. The closeness, both literal and symbolic, between Prince Andrew, Sarah Ferguson, and the wider royal family can be seen as a ticking time bomb. This connection is not merely a private matter. It represents a potential risk to a monarchy that is striving to preserve unity and public confidence. In an era where every move and relationship of royal family members is closely scrutinized, excessive closeness to controversial figures can erode the monarchy's credibility and invite unforeseen consequences. Looney's warning not only points to the dangers associated with Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, but also extends to other members of their circle, raising serious concerns about the broader influence of the York family on the stability of the monarchy. Looney's warning goes beyond Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson to include their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, pointing to concerns about the entire York branch. He stresses that this is not an isolated issue, but one that could create lasting tension and weaken the monarchy's image of unity and stability. What do you think? Is the York family truly a risk to the monarchy's future, or is this concern overblown? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more dramatic and unexpected royal stories. The real concern lies in the risk that the collective presence of the York family may pose to the public image of the monarchy. The implication is that even in the absence of any new scandals, their mere proximity to the royal family could pull the institution back into the shadow of past controversies. The close ties among members of the York family, especially between Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, have the potential to revive uncomfortable memories of earlier scandals. Even without any fresh incidents, their continued visibility can prompt both the media and the public to reopen old narratives, ultimately weakening the stability and renewed image the royal family is striving to protect. Although Looney does not revisit the darker details of the past, the message he delivers is unmistakably clear. The shadow of Prince Andrew's past still lingers, and those memories continue to weigh on the monarchy's public image, even as time moves forward. The controversies surrounding Prince Andrew, from his links to Epstein to past allegations of misconduct, have left lasting impressions in the public consciousness. This is precisely why the continued closeness of the York family to the royal household is seen as a potential risk to the modern, transparent image King Charles is striving to build. Even without triggering new scandals, these associations remain highly sensitive and carry the power to pull the monarchy back into a chapter of history marked by controversy. For longtime royal watchers, Andrew Looney's warning instantly revives unsettling memories of Prince Andrew's ties to Jeffrey Epstein, one of the most explosive scandals in modern royal history. The fallout triggered intense public outrage, and Andrew's widely criticized 2019 Newsnight interview only made the situation far worse. The later civil lawsuit alleging sexual assault, though ultimately settled, resulted in Andrew being stripped of all military titles and royal patronages. The final outcome was his complete removal from public royal life, effectively sidelined and, in many ways, erased from official royal duties and appearances. King Charles has made no secret of his plan to streamline the monarchy. This is a deliberate strategy designed to keep the institution not only leaner, but also more cost-effective, while reducing the potential damage caused by future scandals. The king's objective is to safeguard the monarchy's reputation, ensuring it can continue to function and evolve without being dragged into recurring public relations crises. This approach is not only about maintaining the stability of the crown, but also about demonstrating thoughtful and decisive leadership in a modern age, presenting a more refined, responsible, and trustworthy image to the public. However, this strategy is far from simple, as it also requires the king to strike a delicate balance between protecting the institution and preserving close family ties. Despite his efforts to streamline the monarchy and limit the involvement of controversial figures, King Charles has continued to maintain a personal connection with family members, such as Prince Andrew, who has faced intense media scrutiny. This creates a clear tension with his vision of a modern, streamlined, and trustworthy monarchy, as these relationships can directly weaken the royal family's public image. Balancing family loyalty with the responsibility to safeguard the monarchy's reputation remains one of the most difficult challenges King Charles faces in the early stages of his reign. Andrew Looney's stark warning, "More scandals are about to happen," points to deep instability within the royal family. It serves as a reminder that even a centuries-old monarchy is vulnerable to modern pressures. The crown now faces the difficult task of protecting public trust while managing sensitive family ties. Ongoing connections to controversial figures like Prince Andrew risk weakening the monarchy's stability. Though harsh, Looney's message underscores how vital it is for the monarchy to uphold an image that is not only strong, but also clean and trustworthy. Following those warnings, King Charles's solo trip to the church took on deeper meaning. Was it simply a quiet Sunday ritual, or a moment of serious reflection on the difficult choices ahead? Every decision he makes now has the power to shape the monarchy's future. Driving alone without guards or ceremony revealed a rare, human side of royal life, perhaps a silent moment of contemplation about how he will lead both his family and the nation. The choices ahead could redefine the course of royal history. However, it may be far simpler than it appears. King Charles could merely be seeking a moment of calm before the royal family gathers at Balmoral for their annual summer retreat. Balmoral, with its deep sense of tranquility and privacy, has long been the place where the royal family can truly unwind, far from camera flashes and constant public scrutiny. Whether driven by strategy or simple personal need, these quiet moments may give the king time to restore his energy and reflect more clearly on the challenges ahead. Whether preparing for long-term planning or simply taking a brief pause, each choice reflects the vision he holds for how he intends to guide the monarchy in the years to come. This moment offers King Charles a rare chance to pause and breathe before stepping back into the intricate rhythm of royal life, where every movement is watched closely by both the public and the media. For the king, Balmoral is not merely a place of rest, but a retreat where he can briefly set aside the weight of his responsibilities, regain his inner calm, and prepare for the trials that lie ahead. Some even interpret this quiet journey as a subtle expression of independence. It is King Charles's quiet way of reminding both his family and the world that, even within a life defined by luxury, protocol, and duty, he can still embrace moments of simplicity, privacy, and personal freedom, an experience few in the world are ever truly granted. This article comes from Andrew Looney, a highly respected historian and biographer, known not only for his vast knowledge, but also for his sharp, perceptive, and unwavering views on powerful public figures. Looney has spent decades researching major historical events and influential individuals, particularly within the royal family. His works, including detailed books on Guy Burgess and Lord Mountbatten, have become essential references for anyone seriously studying the history of the British monarchy. These studies not only reveal his deep understanding of the past, but also provide thoughtful analysis of shifting relationships and the transfer of power across generations. That is why King Charles's recent solo trip to Carrick feels especially weighty in hindsight. On the surface, it may appear to be a simple moment of quiet reflection and personal peace, yet it carries a far deeper significance. These seemingly ordinary moments inevitably stir the underlying tension within the monarchy, particularly as King Charles faces major challenges both as a man and as a monarch. While the journey may offer a brief escape from ceremony and duty, it unfolds against the backdrop of serious warnings from royal experts, making every move by the king feel more consequential than ever. It is a moment of stillness and introspection, but also a time of mental preparation for the critical strategic decisions that lie ahead. Here's a slightly shorter, still smooth and continuous version. 3 weeks. Just 3 weeks, yet that brief moment was enough to pull back the velvet curtain, hiding a truth no one expected. It makes you wonder, do you believe in destiny quietly guiding people together, or in carefully crafted plans shaping everything behind the scenes? Today, we're stepping into the pages of one man's private diary, a prince who truly believed he had walked into a real-life fairy tale. But as we follow his words, it becomes clear that behind the magic he felt, something far more complicated was starting to unfold. But then, because of one small, ordinary detail that everyone else overlooked, he realized he wasn't chosen at all, he had been targeted. In that moment, his whole world fell apart. Could the love he believed in actually be nothing more than a perfectly staged performance? Let's explore this story together. And remember to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and drop a comment to share what you think. Serena Williams, honorary member of Soho House, media executives, venture capitalists. Harry highlighted and highlighted, the yellow ink spreading further and further across the page on the bride's side. Of the 200 guests Meghan had invited, over 60 had direct, deep ties to Marcus Anderson's network and Soho House, each connection more revealing than the last. They weren't childhood friends. They weren't family members except for her mother. They weren't long-time co-stars. They were a carefully cultivated network, a web of influence and access designed to position her exactly where she needed to be. Harry held his breath, his finger hovering over the play button. William's voice filled the cold, empty room. It wasn't the arrogant, commanding tone of a crown prince that Harry had once imagined. Instead, it was calm, steady, serious, yet laced with concern and a quiet plea. It was the voice of an older brother trying to protect his reckless younger sibling before the storm hit. "600 names, the people who had witnessed the most sacred vow of his life. Harry had once viewed the list with gratitude. Now, he examined it like an investigator. Taking a yellow highlighter, he began to mark entries. Marcus Anderson front row, Jessica Mulrooney, VIP guest, stylist, close Soho House contact. Misha Nono, the one thought to have arranged the secret blind date, also a Soho House member. Harry noticed a photo clipped in the file, taken at the reception that evening. Marcus stood with 4 other executives, champagne glasses in hand, their smiles not the warm smiles of well-wishers, but the calculated grins of people who had just completed a major project, a successful merger. His wedding, painfully, wasn't a celebration of love. It was a summit, a gala, honoring the success of the climbing strategy they had meticulously orchestrated. And Harry realized that in the world of power brokers, nothing comes free. That investment, the goal of recouping it, was him. And this truth led to an even harsher realization. The next morning, Harry did something he hadn't done since the wedding day. He walked into the archive office, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out the thick, leather-bound file, the official guest list for the royal wedding. By this point, Harry was completely drained. He hadn't eaten or slept for 3 days, wandering through his vast study like a shadow, a lost soul in the very house he had spent millions on to buy peace. Every piece of evidence he uncovered pointed to a ruthless conclusion. Yet there remained one final place, one place he hadn't dared to touch, a black box holding the greatest regret of his life. Harry grabbed a pen and paper and started calculating flights from Toronto to London, New York, Madrid, stylist, makeup, hair, evening gowns, the cost of maintaining an image. The number in front of him was staggering, $70,000 a year. That was the net cost just to keep up appearances. Meghan's actual income, after taxes and agent fees, didn't even cover half of that. Someone had been funding her dream. Someone had carefully paved the way. He had ignored it, turned off the phone, thrown it onto the sofa, whispering to himself, "He's jealous. He doesn't want me to be happy." Now, with trembling hands, Harry accessed his personal cloud, scrolling back through the years 2020, 2019, 2018, until the cursor landed on the folder, November 2017. Inside were audio files that had never been deleted, lying there like unexploded time bombs, waiting to be opened. "Harry, pick up the phone, please. Or at least listen to this message. I need you to know the truth. The Palace security team has completed the Level 3 background check. The results aren't what you think." Harry bit his lip until it bled. William's voice continued, each word hammering through the silence. "Meghan isn't a newcomer. She's been an important link in the Soho House network for years. Three years before the two of you just happened to meet. This isn't a coincidence. There's no such thing as a coincidence that consistent and that geographically precise. Please, think carefully before you drop to one knee. Don't let your emotions cloud your judgment." Harry froze, his entire body going numb, as tears welled up hot, sharp, and bitter, streaming down his cheeks. He rewound the message, listened again, and then again, each replay cutting deeper than the last. Harry frantically clicked through the next files and discovered two more voicemails he had never fully listened to. In one, William warned that security had noticed Meghan appearing at Harry's charity events even though she wasn't on the guest list, lingering in the VIP area, looking for a chance to approach. In the other, William's voice grew urgent, edged with fear. "Harry, Marcus Anderson has deep ties with your old friends. He's tightening the noose. You're surrounded, and you don't even realize it." And Harry, Marcus Anderson's reputation in the intelligence world isn't good at all. He's known for using women as tools to gain power and slip into elite circles. There was a pause in the recording, and Harry could hear his brother's weary sigh from years ago. "Harry, listen.
Surveillance reports show she's been photographed at the exact places you go, the exact hotels you stay in, meeting the right people in your circle, consistently, ever since 2014. It was the old voicemail archive. A painful memory, sharp as a razor, suddenly surged through Harry's mind, tearing at him. He remembered the days of November 2017, just before the engagement of the century was announced. He remembered his phone constantly ringing, the name flashing on the screen, William. And what did Harry, the prince consumed by love, blinded by pride and a desperate need for validation, do that day? For years, Harry had told himself a story that the royal family was against him, that William was jealous of his freedom, but the stark truth coming through the speaker shattered it all. William wasn't jealous. He wasn't trying to control Harry. He wasn't biased. William had intelligence. He wasn't speaking from emotion. He was speaking from national security files. And Harry, the lonely prince who had spent his life running from the falseness of the palace, longing for someone to love him for his broken, vulnerable soul, finally faced the most bitter truth. He had never been chosen for love. He had been targeted for his utility. He wasn't the hero rescuing a Cinderella princess. He was the grand prize in an elite hunting game, every move and every smile orchestrated for someone else's purpose. Harry remembered that day. He had listened to the first few seconds of the message, then deleted it in a fit of anger, convinced his brother was trying to destroy his happiness. But William hadn't been destroying anything, he had been trying to save Harry. Harry buried his head in the keyboard, sobs choking through the silence of the dark room. The realization shattered something deep inside him. He understood, painfully, that he had slammed the door in the face of the only person who truly loved him and had wanted to protect him from this elaborate trap. And before you can even scream, the freezing cold water rushes in, swallowing you whole. That's exactly what was happening inside Harry's mind at that very moment. His entire worldview, every belief he had defended with his honor, his family, and his title, had crumbled completely, leaving him adrift in shock and disbelief. Now, every night, when the million-dollar mansion drifts into sleep, Harry lies awake, tossing and turning, eyes wide open, staring at the dark ceiling above, haunted by the collapse of everything he once thought he knew and trusted. In his mind, a movie theater never turned off. He rewound the film of his life over the past 10 years, fast-forwarding and rewinding, examining each frame under the harsh light of the brutal truth he had just uncovered. He remembered the shy smile she had on their first date. He remembered how surprised she seemed when she learned he loved Africa. "Oh, I love Africa too. That's where I found myself," she had said. A stranger stood before him, wearing the face of the woman he loved, but carrying the soul of a perfectly planted spy. And as dawn slowly approached, Harry closed his eyes, a tear slipping quietly onto the pillow. He knew that when the sun rose, he would have to put on the mask of happiness once more, hold her hand, smile for the cameras, and play the part expected of him. But deep inside, that prince, the one who had once believed in love, trust, and family, was already dead. Could it be that those so-called shared interests weren't a meeting of souls, but the result of a terrifyingly meticulous target profiling process? The truth he had fought so hard to deny gnawed at him in the darkness, brutal as a wild animal. Meghan hadn't accidentally fallen into his world out of love at first sight. She had entered deliberately step by step with a strategy, a roadmap, a guide, Marcus, a sponsor the network, and a path cleared the media. And now, with that door closed, with him having turned his back on his family to choose this so-called love, he was struck by a harsh realization. The price of this illusory freedom was his soul. The feeling was like walking confidently across a beautifully frozen lake. You think the ice is solid, eternal, and then, in the stillness, you hear it cracking, right beneath your heels. The crack spreads, faster than lightning. But Harry no longer felt warmth. A cold, primal fear crept into every fiber of his being. He realized the real nightmare wasn't the paparazzi lurking outside the gates or the malicious tabloid headlines. The true horror was lying right next to him, in the same bed, under the same roof. He was sharing his life and his most private moments with a stranger, and the realization sent a shiver down his spine he couldn't shake. He was the golden key, the one who could unlock the ultimate door of power that Marcus and Meghan had coveted for a decade. The realization hit him like a tidal wave, sweeping away the last fragile remnants of romance. This wasn't a Disney fairy tale, this was a business merger, where emotions were wielded as financial leverage. Harry slowly turned his head to the side, and in the dim light, he saw his wife sleeping soundly, her steady breath and peaceful face radiant, beautiful like an angel. He remembered the uncanny shared interests, the books she just happened to read, the exact ones he loved, and the things she said, as if she could read his thoughts. Harry had once believed it was fate, convinced that two kindred souls had found each other in the chaos of the world. But now, a brutal question echoed through his mind. Was any of it real, or was it all just a carefully scripted performance? A script meticulously researched, perfectly rehearsed, and orchestrated by Marcus Anderson and the Soho House Network? The truth can sometimes be far more brutal than the sweetest lies. Harry woke up trapped in the nightmare of his own making, but will he continue playing the role of the happy husband? Or will he find a way to break free from this chessboard of fate? Do you think this is just the delusion of a man under too much pressure? Or is it truly a perfectly executed hunting plan by the elite? Share your theories in the comments below. I really want to hear what you think about Marcus and Meghan's moves. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next dark secrets. Thank you, and see you next time. Only 16 words, just 16, were enough to change everything. In the stillness of the early morning, a stunning and unexpected announcement broke the quiet, signaling the close of a significant chapter in royal history. Normally, the royal family reveals major decisions after months of careful planning and preparation, but this moment unfolded differently. The future of Queen Camilla, a future that had been anticipated, analyzed, and debated for years, was officially brought to an abrupt end, effective immediately. The decision came out of nowhere. No warning, no preparation, and now an even bigger question hangs in the air. Is this truly the end, or just the beginning of a new and potentially intense internal battle within the royal family? Drop a comment with 1 if you sympathize with this story, or 0 if you see it differently. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss what happens next, where we'll dig even deeper and reveal every hidden detail behind this unfolding story. At exactly 6:53 a.m. on November 28, while most of Britain was still wrapped in the muted blue-gray calm of early winter, a palace message appeared so abrupt and bone-cold that even veteran royal reporters were caught off guard. Queen Camilla's future had officially come to an end, effective immediately. 16 words released into a quiet morning landed with the force of a hammer blow, powerful enough to break through the stillness around them. Yet what made the moment truly unsettling wasn't the announcement itself, but the deep, lingering silence that followed. The palace usually hides major decisions behind midday ceremonies or late afternoon timing, when public attention naturally begins to drift. But this time was completely different. No warning, no preparation, no diplomatic buffer to ease the shift in royal power. Instead, the message dropped like a stone hitting a frozen lake, sharp, unmistakable, and impossible to reverse. Across the United Kingdom, people started their morning with the same shared sense of disbelief. In Yorkshire, a farmer stopped in his tracks while spreading dry hay for his cattle as his phone lit up with the breaking alert. In Edinburgh, a nurse finishing her overnight shift whispered, "So, they finally went through with it." In London, a bus driver glanced at the headline and slowly shook his head, muttering, "Looks like this winter won't slip by quietly, will it?" And overseas, the reaction was no softer. On CBS, the words "palace" confirms Camilla's future slid across the screen as anchors traded glances loaded with more questions than answers. Analysts on CNN, still wrapping up their late-night segment, called the move severe and unprecedented for a queen consort still serving on the throne. Even with the time difference, American viewers, especially older audiences who had lived through Diana's era, immediately sensed just how significant this shift truly was. But inside Buckingham Palace, those familiar with the situation understood that, at least in this narrative, the decision was never truly sudden. For months, Camilla's role had been portrayed as increasingly unpredictable, her push for greater influence depicted as more forceful, and her reported tensions with senior figures shown as growing more serious. William and Anne, within this storyline, quietly gathered every concern, noted each irregularity, and urged Charles to step in before things reached a breaking point. And now, on this icy November morning, the palace within this account had finally taken action, and taken it decisively. So what exactly pushed events toward this chilling winter verdict? What pressures, missteps, and internal tensions brought everything to the point where even the king could no longer protect his queen? Stay with me, because the truth behind this announcement is darker, colder, and far more tangled than the 16 words sent out at 6:53 a.m. To understand why the palace chose such a drastic path, we need to go back to the months that seemed calm on the surface. Those were the days when the warning signs began appearing quietly subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. For King Charles, the fracture didn't begin with any scandal or confrontation. It started with a slow, almost invisible disruption in the steady rhythm of the monarchy, a rhythm he had spent decades trying to preserve. When Charles took the throne, he believed Camilla would help usher in a calmer era, one shaped by cultural diplomacy, steady judgment, and a sense of continuity. Her reading room initiative was widely praised. Her public engagements strengthened her image, and her presence seemed to steady the turbulence that marked the beginning of his reign. For a time, she really was his most dependable partner. But beneath that calm surface, something very different was beginning to form. Those closest to Charles were the first to sense the shift. Camilla started insisting on revising ceremonial plans, pushing her preferred advisors into positions that went against long-standing protocol, and responding sharply whenever staff questioned her choices. It wasn't a crisis, at least not yet, but it was the first sign of what was coming. These were the first cold winds signaling that winter was drawing near. Charles tried to ignore the rising tension. He had always leaned on Camilla emotionally, especially during stressful periods, and the early months of his reign were nothing but pressure. Constitutional responsibilities, endless travel, and constant scrutiny over the monarchy's stability. He convinced himself that Camilla's growing assertiveness was simply her way of shielding him from being overwhelmed. But when autumn arrived, her decisions began stretching far beyond protection and into territory the palace could no longer ignore. Internal reviews revealed that several ceremonial plans had been adjusted without proper authorization. A long-standing tribute tradition honoring the late Queen Elizabeth had been altered only to be reversed after Princess Anne insisted on preserving protocol, a tiny detail to outsiders, but a sacred responsibility to those who understand royal tradition. Even Charles, who had once brushed off concerns like these, started to sense a troubling distance between Camilla's intentions and the standards a monarch is expected to uphold. His clearest reckoning came during a private meeting at Clarence House, when a senior aide laid out a series of staff reports, rising tensions, sudden directives, unexpected changes to heritage displays, and a steadily shrinking inner circle of advisors whom Camilla trusted more than the palace's official teams. Charles listened in complete silence. For the first time, he felt the full weight of a truth he had been trying not to face. By mid-November, the problem had grown far beyond questions of personal preference or leadership style. It had grown into a structural threat, one serious enough to endanger the royal family's entire winter agenda. William and Anne had recognized the pattern long before anyone else. The king could no longer turn away from what was unfolding. And that was when the path leading to the November 28 announcement truly began. The first unmistakable sign that something was slipping came into focus not from scandal, but from Princess Anne's instincts, sharpened by decades of protecting royal tradition, with a level of discipline few within the family could ever match. Anne had always been practical, steady, and uninterested in palace theatrics. So when she raised a concern, people paid attention. It happened during an early November review inside the picture gallery at Windsor. The winter sunlight was thin that day, casting pale streaks across the ornate frames as Anne walked alongside a senior curator, going over the annual adjustments to the heritage displays. She paused before a familiar arrangement, a trio made up of Queen Elizabeth's sapphire brooch, a framed program from the 1953 Commonwealth Tour, and a handwritten letter from the late Queen to Charles. But now, the brooch was missing. In its place rested a newer piece, more contemporary, far less meaningful, and Anne had no recollection of ever approving such a substitution. The curator, clearly uneasy and choosing his words carefully, explained that the change had been requested from a higher authority and executed through a private channel connected directly to Camilla's office. Anne's eyes tightened, her expression turning firm. She didn't say a word, but the message was unmistakable. Something was wrong, and winter was no time for disorder. At the same time, public sentiment had begun to shift. A late-season poll showed that while many Britons still respected Camilla's public work, a significant share, especially those over 60, felt uneasy about what they saw as her growing influence over ceremonial traditions. This stood in sharp contrast to reactions in the United States, where many older viewers saw Camilla as a symbol of resilience and viewed her growing role as the final chapter of a long, enduring love story. That divide in perception unsettled the royal household, because it showed the monarchy was being interpreted through two completely different lenses, ones that could no longer be reconciled. Anne's concern deepened just a week later during a rehearsal for a small winter memorial. She noticed that Camilla's name had been placed before the others in the internal ceremonial order, something that had never happened in the past without a formal royal directive to support it. The way names were arranged, especially for winter memorials connected to the legacies of Elizabeth and Diana, had always followed long-standing tradition rather than personal preference. When Anne calmly asked the staff for an explanation, they hesitated, exchanged uneasy looks, and eventually admitted that Camilla's office had suggested minor adjustments for visual cohesion. Anne's voice stayed calm and steady, but the quiet strength underneath was impossible to miss. Tradition didn't bend just for the sake of cohesion. While Anne began to sense a kind of structural weakening, William felt it on a more emotional level, the sort of shift that hinted at deeper ambitions moving quietly behind the scenes. By mid-November, he received a confidential packet from a trusted aide that showed subtle but noticeable changes in how Camilla was being presented to the public. Stories started appearing across multiple outlets, especially in the American press, painting her as the steady, guiding presence, helping the monarchy navigate a time of transition. At first, William brushed it off as simple media interpretation. But when he noticed the exact same wording showing up in briefing notes drafted by a newly formed communications group, one working closely with Camilla's team, an old sense of unease crept in. It was the same feeling he'd known as a boy whenever someone tried to quietly reshape the story around Diana. Only this time, he wasn't a child anymore. He had a voice, and he was determined to use it. The final spark came during a planning meeting for the Winter Memorial honoring Queen Elizabeth. Anne, William, and two senior ceremonial advisors met in a small room usually reserved for the most sensitive conversations. On the table sat a draft program outlining a series of memorial events that had been revised in a way that lifted Camilla's role above the symbolic elements tied to the late queen. The instant Anne saw it, her jaw tightened, and William couldn't hide his frustration. "Who approved this?" he asked. The reply came with a soft, hesitant apology. The changes hadn't gone through the official ceremonial office at all, but through a private advisor closely linked to Camilla's most loyal inner circle. That phrase, loyal inner circle, was exactly what Anne had hoped she would never have to hear again. To her, it was the final confirmation that a line had been crossed. This was no longer about style or personal preference. It was an attempt to quietly redefine the hierarchy of legacy. For Anne, it was unacceptable. For William, it was unforgivable. And for the institution itself, it was simply unsustainable. As hail rattled sharply against the window, the siblings exchanged a look that needed no words at all. In that silent moment, it felt as though the crown had reached its breaking point. A decision would have to be made, and it would be made before winter came to an end. By mid-November, the cold had settled deep over Windsor. Breath turned to soft mist in the corridors, windows fogged with condensation, and the daylight faded into nights that seemed to stretch on forever. But the deepest chill didn't come from the winter air itself. It came from the growing pressure inside Buckingham Palace, a tension that was becoming harder and harder to conceal. Queen Camilla was the first to sense it. She picked up on the small, subtle changes. Meetings that once appeared on her desk right away, now arriving slowly. Ceremonial drafts quietly moving past her without notice, and William's voice growing colder and more distant whenever the family came together. Even Charles had become more reflective, often pausing before he spoke, as if carefully weighing thoughts he wasn't ready to share. Camilla, long accustomed to reading the quiet language of royal life, noticed every signal. She saw them clearly but chose to look the other way. The palace, however, was no longer willing to look the other way. Inside the communications office, a series of winter media audits uncovered something deeply troubling. The international narrative around Camilla was starting to split apart. In Britain, outlets like The Telegraph, The Times, and the Evening Standard became increasingly critical, questioning her growing influence and suggesting she was moving into areas that had traditionally been off-limits. At the same time, in the United States, networks such as CNN and CBS aired pointed commentary, openly wondering whether the monarchy was beginning to lose the balance it had carefully maintained under Queen Elizabeth II. None of this took Camilla by surprise. What did surprise her was how quickly these analyses were making their way onto the king's desk. It happened one evening in the blue sitting room, where Charles, wrapped in a thick tartan blanket, was reviewing an internal briefing prepared by his press secretary. Camilla stepped in quietly, planning to discuss her upcoming holiday engagements. Instead, she found Charles fully absorbed in a report outlining growing concerns about her increasingly assertive role. Charles slowly closed the file, weariness etched across his face. "We'll talk about this later," he said softly. But the gentleness in his voice only deepened the ache in her chest. His pause wasn't avoidance, it was uncertainty. And Camilla understood that uncertainty was often the first sign that change was coming. Meanwhile, William and Anne were moving with increasing precision. They met privately in a small working room at Windsor, a room once used by the late Queen Elizabeth for her winter briefings. The fireplace crackled softly, but its warmth did little to calm the tension settling over the room. Anne spread out a set of documents showing that ceremonial changes were being routed through Camilla's private advisors instead of the palace's official channels. William read through each page, feeling a wave of frustration one he had kept under control for months rise to the surface. "The crown can't survive the winter like this," he murmured. It wasn't about embarrassment, and it wasn't about shifting loyalties. It was the realization that the system itself was slowly losing its balance. Together, they brought the information to the king. The meeting happened late at night, long after most of the royal household had retired for the evening. The air was cold enough that their breath briefly fogged the air before fading away. Charles listened without interrupting, the silence stretching longer than anyone expected. His gaze slowly moved from the papers in front of him to the portraits lining the far wall. Elizabeth and Diana, two women whose legacies had shaped the monarchy more deeply than any written constitution. "At last," he said, "I can't dismiss this." It was the closest he had come to openly acknowledging the truth. Camilla's actions, whether intentional or not, had begun to overshadow the sense of stability he had promised the nation. Across the palace, staff quietly started drafting contingency plans, alternative ceremonial frameworks, revised communication strategies, and clearer chains of command. For the first time in decades, the phrase "winter stability strategy" began appearing in internal briefings. Throughout this intense moment, one reality became impossible to ignore: the global reaction. Viewers in the UK felt uneasy and concerned, while many older American audiences watching late-night CNN coverage could hardly believe the monarchy seemed to be drifting back into internal tension. If you're watching from the United States or anywhere around the world, I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. It's a powerful reminder of how far this royal story has traveled and how strongly it continues to resonate across borders. This story is drawing attention worldwide, and I'd love to see where you're watching from. Drop a comment with your city or country, and let's show how global this community truly is. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next update. No one said it out loud, but everyone understood what it meant. The palace was preparing for a decision that would not be undone. Even the atmosphere had shifted. The once busy hallways outside Camilla's offices had grown strangely quiet. Advisors avoided each other's eyes. Meetings were delayed or quietly canceled at the last minute. And at Ray Mill House, where Camilla escaped on weekends from the rigid structure of palace life, she found herself staring out at the frost-covered garden, wondering whether she had misread her influence or simply pushed too far. The scope of the government's plan rose to meet the weight of this historic moment. Buckingham Palace had never felt so heavy. Inside the silent, solemn green drawing room, King Charles stood alone, shaking, yet steady at heart. "I can no longer serve as your king," he declared, his voice unwavering as it broke centuries of tradition. This was not about politics or scandal, it was something far deeper, something profoundly human. William and Catherine were left speechless, overwhelmed by emotion as the news reached them. The crown seemed to hover in the silence, heavier than any words that could be spoken. The monarchy had stepped into a new chapter, and the truth would send tremors through its very foundation. The struggle with a hidden illness had reshaped everything. Behind the glitter of grand ceremonies and carefully prepared statements, another reality was unfolding quietly, behind closed doors. If this story caught your attention, type a 1-inch in the comments. If it didn't, drop a 0. Don't forget to like, share this video, and tell us what you think in the comment section below. Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you never miss another fascinating royal family update. Now, let's get into the story. King Charles has quietly been fighting a far more serious illness than anyone outside his closest inner circle has been told. The official statement released months ago spoke only of treatment, rest, and optimism, but behind palace walls, the reality is far more heartbreaking. It began with constant exhaustion, postponed appointments, shortened addresses, and engagements that ended earlier than planned. Yet it was the family who noticed the most troubling signs: trembling hands, labored breathing after standing too long. Discreet hospital visits were carefully scheduled between royal duties. Then came the diagnosis, confirmed in silence by a team of specialists: cancer, a rare form for a reigning monarch. The turning point arrived on a cold afternoon at Sandringham. After weeks of mounting exhaustion, Charles collapsed during a private policy briefing, sinking into an armchair as stunned aides looked on. Prince William was the only one who remained in the room. In that moment, all pretense fell away. That night, doctors delivered the devastating verdict. His condition was deteriorating far faster than expected. "You have months, not years," they told him. "You are not only a king, you are a man, a father, a grandfather." The following morning, Charles reportedly summoned William to his private quarters. No guards, no aides, just father and son, and the unspoken truth between them. "I want to be here for my grandchildren," Charles whispered, his eyes fixed on a photo of the children. "I want to watch them grow up while I still can." What made the decision even harder was Catherine. Her own battle with cancer had only recently begun to show signs of improvement. Watching her endure with such quiet strength stirred something deep within Charles, a blend of admiration and quiet heartbreak. He had faced great loss throughout his life, and deep down, he knew the kingdom could not withstand the burden of two future monarchs silently carrying such personal trials at the same time. A senior palace aide later revealed that the king had reached a quiet realization. He could no longer fight his illness while bearing the immense responsibility of leading a nation. Continuing on this path was no longer possible. His decision was not born of defeat, it was rooted in love. Love for his family's legacy and for the fleeting time he could never reclaim. The emotional conversation between father and son did not take place inside a grand palace chamber. It unfolded at Highgrove, in Charles's private study, a room faintly scented with polished wood and aging paper. That space had witnessed national briefings, intimate family moments, and years of personal reflection. But that evening, the air felt different. A father and son stood at opposite ends of a life-altering decision. William arrived in the late afternoon, after the staff had gone home. Silence filled the house, deliberate, almost sacred. Charles stood by the window, gazing out at the garden he had tended for decades. He didn't turn when William entered. "You can't just walk away from the crown like this," William said, his voice tight with emotion. "Not like this. The country still needs you." Charles remained silent for a moment, then slowly turned. And for the first time in a long while, William did not see a king, he saw a man, exhausted, trembling under the weight of everything. His eyes were red, his shoulders slumped, and when he finally spoke, his voice broke. "I'm not walking away from anything," Charles whispered. "I'm choosing to hold on to the little time I have left." And in that moment, William's heart shattered. Tears streamed down Charles's face. "Every morning I wake up not knowing if I'll make it through the day without collapsing," he said softly. "I can't give this country the king it deserves anymore, but I can still be a grandfather. I need to watch them grow up while I still can. That's all I'm asking for." William clenched his jaw, torn between duty and emotion. The future king within him ached for tradition and responsibility, but the son remembered his mother's fading voice, the losses that had once stolen their time, and now threatened to do so again. Then Catherine entered, carrying a quiet calm into the heart of the storm. She took no sides. She spoke very little. Catherine gently took William's hand, holding it firmly so he could breathe a little easier, lifting some of the weight from his shoulders. And in that moment, everything shifted. William's eyes filled with tears, and his voice broke as he whispered, "All right, I'll do it. But not for the crown. For her." The decision was not sealed by royal decree, it was forged in the quiet promise of a son to his father. And the abdication speech that followed would echo with quiet heartbreak. The blue drawing room had never borne witness to a moment like this. Once the setting for Queen Elizabeth's serene Christmas messages beneath, softly glowing lights, peaceful, dignified, timeless, it now carried a strange and somber weight. Cameras rolled. Curtains were drawn tight. A small circle of trusted aides stood nearby, barely breathing. The silence was thick, heavy with the magnitude of a historic turning point. King Charles stood at the center of the room, beneath a towering portrait of his mother. His hands trembled as he unfolded the parchment before him. His voice, so often steady in the hardest moments, now wavered, quivering with every word he spoke. He looked directly into the camera, his eyes distant, then began, "For more than a lifetime, I have carried the weight of duty, service, and tradition. But the time has come for me to pass that responsibility on." He paused, as if bracing himself for the burden of what came next. "I hereby abdicate." The room fell into absolute silence, stunned by the words they had just heard. A quiet sob broke from behind the lens. Even hardened, seasoned palace staff struggled to hold back tears they never imagined they would shed. Charles continued carefully, slowly. "I hereby appoint Prince William and his wife Catherine as my successors, entrusted with all the responsibilities of the monarchy, effective immediately." That declaration shattered tradition like glass. There was no gradual transition, no waiting for time to quietly drift by only a final farewell, a decree from a father handing the torch to the next generation. For those who listened closely, the speech was more than a formal ritual. It carried deep sorrow and quiet urgency. "My time, as I now understand it, is no longer measured in years, but in moments." Those words struck like thunder on a clear day, a quiet confession hidden beneath a polished exterior. He was not stepping aside for politics or glory, but because his time was slipping away. When the message ended, the cameras stopped rolling. Yet the room remained silent, frozen in place. A few staff members who had served 3 kings stood motionless, unable to believe what they had witnessed. This was not just the end of a reign, it was the end of an era. A new chapter began, heavy with mixed emotions and immense responsibility. William and Catherine stepped into the private sitting room beside the King's Gallery at Buckingham Palace, the corridor behind them still faintly echoing with the hushed whispers of palace staff and members of the royal family. There were no cameras, no lenses to record this moment, just the two of them, a husband and wife, sitting in silence as they faced a new reality, with the future of the monarchy suddenly resting on their shoulders. The atmosphere in the room felt heavy, not only with the weight of family history and the burdens of a dynasty, but also with unspoken doubts about their readiness and what the future might demand of them. They sat in silence for several minutes, the only sounds the steady ticking of the clock and their quiet breathing. At last, Catherine broke the stillness, her voice trembling, barely above a whisper. "Are we really ready?" She looked at William, her eyes filled with both worry and deep love. "The children, they're still too young to understand what's happening." William didn't respond at once. His gaze drifted toward the fireplace, his jaw clenched as his thoughts flooded with memories stitched together by both pride and pain. He had always known this day would come, but he never imagined it would arrive like this, not with his father's trembling voice still echoing in his ears, not with the crown placed upon him before he had even reached 50. The heartbreak was not about titles or power, but about the moments he had believed would last forever, the years he thought his family would still have together now slipping away in an instant. That evening, in the family's private room, Free from the weight of media and royal protocol, they gathered their 3 children close. There was no formal announcement, no carefully chosen words, just 3 parents seated beside 3 small faces filled with surprise and uncertainty. George sat upright, sensing the seriousness that hung in the air. Charlotte nestled into her mother's arms, feeling the comfort but quietly absorbing an unspoken fear. Louis shifted restlessly, his eyes darting around the room, unable to understand why everything had suddenly changed. William began gently, his words soft but full of meaning. "Grandpa is stepping down from the throne," he said quietly. "From now on, your mother and I will carry much greater responsibilities. There will be difficult times ahead, and we will face them together." George furrowed his brow, his eyes filled with determination and a maturity beyond his years. "I understand, Dad. I will always be by your side, helping you." His words stirred something deep within William and filled him with pride, but Charlotte's response was entirely different. Her lips trembled, and tears slipped silently down her cheeks, not in resistance, but in a quiet acceptance of the deep pain in her heart. It wasn't anger or fear, but the quiet pain of a little girl realizing that the world she knew would never be the same again. Her carefully guarded childhood had suddenly been shortened, transformed by the heavy weight of family responsibility. Louis glanced around with wide, innocent eyes, confused and unable to understand it all. "Why is everyone crying?" he asked, his voice filled with innocence and quiet bewilderment as he looked toward his older siblings. Catherine gently pulled Louis into her arms, whispering soft, reassuring words into his ear, as if trying to shield him from the confusion and calm his fragile heart. All through that night, there were no royal duties, no documents or protocols, only Catherine wrapping Charlotte in a warm blanket, William lingering a little longer as he tucked George into bed, and Louis finally drifting off to sleep in the loving embrace of his family. Though they were deeply aware of the many challenges and pressures that lay ahead, it was in that moment that the family felt most supported and close. They simply wanted to hold tightly to love and peace before life officially turned into a new chapter, one filled with upheaval and trials. Behind that monumental decision lay hidden crises within the royal family that few would ever know, a quiet yet profound struggle shaping both the future of the kingdom and their family. For months, a quiet unease had spread beneath the familiar grandeur of Buckingham Palace. Whispers drifted through the corridors, unusual absences were noticed, and there were moments when King Charles appeared visibly tired after short walks or seemed unsettled during brief meetings. To the public, he remained a symbol of strength and resilience. Yet behind the palace's fortified walls, doubts continued to grow, and unspoken questions lingered. Was the king truly well enough to carry out his duties? Close advisors had known about his cancer diagnosis long before it was officially announced. At first, treatment plans offered a fragile sense of hope, but over time, those nearest to him witnessed a clear decline, noticeable weight loss, trembling hands, and a growing number of last-minute cancellations. The palace released carefully worded statements, allowing the king to rest more and scale back his official duties. Yet those closest to him understood that his decline was accelerating. Behind closed doors, constitutional advisors quietly prepared for unthinkable possibilities. What would happen if a monarch was no longer fit to rule but refused to abdicate? The United Kingdom had never faced such a moment before. Queen Elizabeth had reigned for 70 years, and the machinery of the monarchy was never built to function with a weakened sovereign. At the same time, Catherine's recovery brought renewed strength to the royal family. As she slowly returned to public engagements after her battle with cancer, her grace and resilience stood in stark contrast to Charles's failing health. Catherine had become a symbol of resilience, and Charles felt that deeply. If she could fight and rise again, perhaps it was time for him to finally step back, to rest, and to grant himself a measure of peace. Then came a final, grave warning from his doctor. During a private consultation at Windsor, the doctor made it clear that the stress was rapidly worsening his condition. If he continued in his role, his life would be in serious danger. It was not offered as advice, but drawn as a firm boundary. If you're enjoying this story and want to continue exploring, don't forget to like, share this video, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any of our upcoming content. Now, let's dive back into the story. Today, we're diving into a story tucked deep inside the palace's history, a quiet power struggle between two of the most influential women in the United Kingdom, Princess Catherine and Queen Camilla. This wasn't a clash between two royals fighting for the crown, but a fierce, unwavering stand by a mother defending her child. While the public only ever saw warm smiles in perfectly staged photos, behind the doors of Windsor Castle, a seemingly minor moment involving Princess Charlotte set off an unspoken confrontation. A cold comment, a single judgmental look, and in that moment, everything changed. In this dramatized account, Catherine is portrayed as delivering a calm yet powerful ultimatum to her mother-in-law in order to protect her daughter's confidence, and the imagined moment in the Highgrove sitting room is tense enough for William to clench his jaw while Charles remains completely silent. In that instant, Catherine quietly yet firmly establishes new boundaries, limiting Camilla's access to the family without making any public accusations, drawing an invisible line that no one can overlook. From here, the story unfolds, showing how a single act of maternal strength could shift the balance within the royal household in this narrative retelling. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment with your thoughts, and like this video to continue following the journey ahead. William stayed completely silent as Catherine finished, but the tight set of his jaw made it obvious how much effort it took for him to stay composed. "We can't ignore this," she said with steady conviction. "It's already affecting our little girl, and it's only going to get worse if we don't step in." "I know," William replied, "and we will address it," he added, choosing his words carefully to show he understood the stakes. Inside the palace, every decision required strategy, caution, and timing, because a single wrong step could shift everything and trigger consequences they might not fully foresee. Camilla took a slow sip of water before turning her attention directly to the little girl. "Sweetheart, that isn't necessary. Let the adults have a little quiet. Why don't you sit still like a proper young lady?" Her tone wasn't loud or harsh, but the edge in her words carried a subtle sting. It was the kind of remark grown-ups often dismiss as harmless, yet it lands deeply on a child who's simply trying to belong. Charlotte's cheeks warmed with embarrassment. She gently closed her book, folded her arms, and fell into a stiff, uncomfortable silence that felt far heavier than it appeared. Catherine agreed to attend, but only on her own terms. She told William she wouldn't leave Charlotte on her own, not even for a moment, and certainly not anywhere near Camilla. At this point, staying close had become a necessary strategy. Camilla arrived the next day, still surrounded by her usual entourage and dressed in her carefully curated wardrobe. Since the incident at Highgrove, she hadn't said a word to Catherine except when protocol required them to interact in public. It was a double blow, an understated scolding aimed at Charlotte, and a pointed critique of Catherine's parenting. Catherine stepped into the room. Camilla looked up, startled. "There you are," Catherine said calmly. "I've been looking for you, sweetheart." Charlotte rose and immediately moved to her mother's side. "We were just having a little chat," Camilla said, her tone light but carrying that familiar sharp undercurrent. "I heard," Catherine answered. Camilla arched a brow. She was only Camilla didn't respond. Her silence was deliberate, a quiet acknowledgement that she had lost this round. But Catherine was done caring about royal politics or silent power plays. She had spent years protecting the institution, and now her priorities had shifted to something far more important, protecting her daughter. Once they stepped out of the room, Catherine knelt down beside Charlotte. "You did nothing wrong," she whispered. Charlotte nodded, though her eyes shimmered with tears. Catherine held her gaze, speaking each word with calm certainty. You never have to be afraid to speak up. The polite conversations carried on throughout the room, but the voices felt distant, fading into the background as a heavy, unspoken tension settled between the two women. That evening, back at Adelaide Cottage, Catherine tucked Charlotte into bed herself. She sat on the edge of the mattress and gently asked, "Were you sad today?" Charlotte nodded. "Just a little. Lady Camilla doesn't like it when I talk too much." Her words were simple, honest, and painfully clear, the final confirmation of everything Catherine had hoped wasn't true. She kissed her daughter's forehead, stood up, and walked down the hallway with a new, unwavering resolve in her expression. The situation truly escalated the following weekend during a private dinner at Highgrove, Charles's personal residence. What was meant to be a warm, relaxed evening shifted the moment Catherine and Charlotte walked in. Camilla barely lifted her head from her seat near the fireplace, her expression making it clear she wasn't pleased. Charlotte stepped forward with a polite smile and said, "Good evening, ma'am," but Camilla didn't respond at all, letting the silence settle over the room like a quiet insult. Catherine didn't wait another second. Her eyes locked onto Camilla with a steady, unflinching focus that instantly shifted the entire atmosphere. Her face, normally warm and gracious, had hardened with resolve. She turned to Charlotte and said calmly, "Why don't you go greet grandfather and then head upstairs with Anna?" Charlotte looked up at her mother, a hint of hesitation in her eyes, but Catherine gave her a small, reassuring nod. The little girl walked over to Charles, gave him a gentle hug, and then quietly left the room. When the door closed behind her, a heavy silence settled over the space. Camilla took a slow sip of her wine and murmured, She's quite sensitive, isn't she?" The room seemed to drop several degrees. Charles tried to step in, but Catherine cut him off before he could say a word, maintaining a calm so steady it was almost unsettling. "I have tried to stay composed because that's what everyone expects of me," she said. "But this time is different. This involves Charlotte, and I will not allow anyone, no matter who they are, to chip away at her confidence." Camilla set her glass down, irritation slipping into her tone. "You're thinking far too deeply about this." Children bounce back. Catherine didn't blink. Children remember how they are spoken to, especially by the people who are supposed to protect them. There's nothing dramatic about this. It's simply the truth. The official explanation was a scheduling conflict, but everyone involved knew what it really was, a quiet, diplomatic message. It was a temporary cut in access, a subtle but unmistakable form of punishment delivered by pulling back the family's openness. In public, the photos still showed bright smiles and perfect unity, but inside the palace, something had fundamentally shifted. Camilla continued attending major events, but she kept her distance from Charlotte. There were no more pointed comments, no more lingering, judgmental glances, at least none that ever reached Catherine's ears. There was no anger and no raised voice, only the steady strength of a mother who had finally reached her limit, and William backed her without hesitation, saying, "We're asking for something simple, basic respect. Charlotte hasn't done anything wrong. She's just being herself." Camilla glanced at Charles for support, but he remained silent, fully aware of what this moment signaled. Catherine had drawn a boundary, and once she did, it wasn't going to shift. The discussion ended quietly, without drama. Yet the change in the room was unmistakable, a subtle but permanent shift in the balance of power. Instead, she said, "Are you sure you're not too tired to be here?" The question sounded gentle on the surface, but its edge was unmistakable, a quiet jab aimed at the girl's sensitivity and at Catherine's earlier intervention. The air in the room tightened instantly, as if every emotion had been pulled taut. Catherine recognized the true intention behind the words the moment they were spoken, yet she stayed perfectly controlled, her expression revealing nothing. And he, with one quick look at the faint tremble in Charlotte's eyes, understood immediately that an old wound had just been reopened. On June 24th, 2025, a private chamber deep within Buckingham Palace became the stage for a historic confrontation. Portraits of past monarchs seemed to watch silently as William, Catherine, and Camilla faced each other before a council of 6 senior advisors and legal counsel. William, dressed in charcoal, pressed his palms against the oak table, radiating cold, controlled calm, defending his mother's memory and his daughter's inheritance. Catherine, in a meticulously tailored navy gown, stood with composed strength, her eyes blazing with restrained anger. Catherine had drawn a boundary, and in a family shaped for centuries by rigid hierarchy, some lines simply can't be crossed without consequences. Still, the situation wasn't truly settled. Camilla had heard the warning, but she hadn't forgotten it. Then came the summer gathering at Balmoral, usually a peaceful refuge where Queen Elizabeth II created a gentle, steady rhythm for the family. But this year, beneath the cool Scottish air, the mood was different. A quiet tension lingered, subtle but undeniable, as everyone sensed that the balance within the family had shifted, and things would not return to the way they were before. The first few days at Balmoral went by in genuine peace. Charlotte slowly began to unwind, her bright spirit returning as Catherine watched her chatter happily over breakfast, sprint across the fields with George and Louis, and even help bake scones in the kitchen. But then the moment came. Catherine was in the drawing room with a few friends and staff members. William was out fishing with Charles, and the children were playing in the garden. And for the first time since they'd arrived, Catherine let her attention drift away from them for more than 5 minutes. That summer ended with the usual photographs, the family standing on the castle steps, smiling for the press, presenting the image of perfect unity. But behind those polished pictures, everything had shifted. Camilla had lost something she hadn't even realized was slipping away. Catherine's willingness to overlook things for the sake of appearances, that tolerance, was gone. A mother had stepped in to ensure her daughter would never again feel small or unworthy. And in doing so, she claimed a new kind of influence, one that would quietly, but permanently, reshape the balance of power within the royal world. A senior advisor cleared his throat, a sharp, cutting sound that echoed through the tense chamber. His voice was calm, deliberate, making the air feel even heavier, as though the walls themselves were listening. "Your Majesty," he said carefully, "our investigation found no auction record for the Qatar pearl earrings. Their micro-engraved identification fully matches Princess Diana's original registry." Catherine interrupted, her voice calm but firm, leaving no room for doubt. "She's only a child. She doesn't need to be corrected every time she speaks. She's growing perfectly well, and she will continue to do so without ever feeling like a problem." There was no yelling, no raised voices, only a clear, unwavering resolve. "I expect her to be treated with a little more kindness," Catherine added. "That isn't too much to ask." The next morning, Catherine made her first decision. She told everyone Charlotte had a mild cold and kept her home rather than sending her to the charitable gardening event Camilla had organized. It was a quiet, diplomatic message: "Unless I know my daughter is safe, she will not attend." When Camilla heard the news, she merely raised an eyebrow as an aide mentioned Charlotte's absence. "Perhaps a bit too delicate for a little mud," she murmured. The comment soon reached Catherine, but instead of shocking her, it only steeled her determination further. By the end of the week, palace staff had started to notice the change. Camilla continued to keep her distance from Charlotte. At mealtimes, she sat farther away from the children and made no comments about their behavior, their clothing, or their tone of voice. The change was subtle, but in the royal world, subtlety carries immense weight. Catherine didn't need to raise her voice or spark a scandal. Her calm presence and firm resolve had established a boundary no one could ignore. Even Charles understood well enough not to step in again. And that's how Princess Catherine reset the balance of power within the palace. She didn't need shouting or scandal. She relied on the quiet, unwavering determination of a mother to draw a line no one could cross. In that moment, it became clear to everyone that Catherine was more than just a member of the royal family. She was the ultimate protector of her children. And once that boundary was firmly in place, anyone who dared to challenge it would face consequences they hadn't anticipated. Camilla's silence afterward spoke volumes, a quiet, unspoken acknowledgement that the balance had shifted. Now here's a question for you. If you were in Catherine's shoes, would you have taken a stronger, more forceful approach? Or do you think this subtle form of diplomatic punishment, withdrawing access and setting clear boundaries, was the smartest and most effective strategy? Share your thoughts, reflections, and analysis in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss any of our upcoming royal stories and insights. See you next time. Only 16 words, just 16, were enough to change everything. In the stillness of the early morning, a stunning and unexpected announcement broke the quiet, signaling the close of a significant chapter in royal history. Normally, the royal family reveals major decisions after months of careful planning and preparation, but this moment unfolded differently. The future of Queen Camilla, a future that had been anticipated, analyzed, and debated for years, was officially brought to an abrupt end, effective immediately. The decision came out of nowhere. No warning, no preparation, and now an even bigger question hangs in the air. Is this truly the end, or just the beginning of a new and potentially intense internal battle within the royal family? Drop a comment with 1 if you sympathize with this story, or 0 if you see it differently. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss what happens next, where we'll dig even deeper and reveal every hidden detail behind this unfolding story. As November 28 drew closer, the storm that had been building all season finally reached the walls of Buckingham Palace. Every staff member, advisor, and even Camilla herself understood that once the king made his choice, there would be no turning back. And in the muted stillness of winter, the royal household began preparing for a statement that would change Camilla's future forever. The morning of November 28 began not with chaos, but with a silence so deep it felt as if even the stone walls of Buckingham Palace were bracing for impact. Frost clung tightly to the iron gates, the sun still trapped behind the thick winter sky, and inside her private sitting room, Camilla stood alone, staring at a folder she had never expected to receive so soon. Inside was the final draft of the palace announcement, the one she had sensed was coming, the one she had desperately tried to delay, and it stated clearly that she would permanently withdraw from all ceremonial influence and internal advisory roles. The wording was calm, almost gentle, but the meaning was devastating. Her authority was over. Camilla felt the shock like a physical blow. For months, she had fought to hold on to her relevance, tightening her grip on the ceremonial structure she believed she had earned. She had built what she called her inner circle of loyalty, a small network of people she trusted after a lifetime of criticism and whispered judgment. She truly believed she could help shape the rhythm of the monarchy during its fragile transition, that she could steady the institution while Charles navigated the early years of his reign. But somewhere along the way, her decisiveness had shifted into something else, something that unsettled the staff and made the family uneasy. She moved toward the window, resting her hand against the cold glass. Below, the courtyard lay still under a thin layer of frost, a few guards moving quietly through the pale morning haze. Nothing in the scene had changed, and yet inside her, everything had. Then a knock broke the silence. Charles stepped in, quiet, looking far older than he had just weeks before, his face carrying the heavy weight of a decision he had been putting off for far too long. The moment he saw the look on her face, he seemed to falter. "Camilla," he said softly, but she turned away. "So, this is how it ends?" Her voice wasn't raised, but the tremor in it cut deeper than any anger. "After everything I've endured, Everything I've carried because of you," she continued, as Charles stepped closer, worry etched across his features. "This isn't an end, it's a transition," he tried to say. But she finished the thought for him. A polite phrase, yes, but still a departure, no matter how gently he tried to frame it. They stood in silence as the winter wind tapped softly against the window pane. At last, Charles spoke the fear he had been carrying inside. "The crown has to stay stable. William and Anne believe that." "Of course they do," she replied quietly, her words sharp despite the lowered tone. "They always have. Do you think I don't see the way they look at me? Do you think I haven't felt it in every room I walk into?" Charles swallowed hard, unable to deny what she was saying. But the truth was far more tangled, far more complicated than Camilla was willing to admit. William had seen too many quiet changes to long-standing rituals, too many unauthorized adjustments to heritage displays, and too many staff members afraid of being overruled by Camilla's private advisors. Anne had watched traditions being bent, shifted, and rearranged, sometimes subtly, sometimes boldly, without any clear line of authority. Both understood that an institution already under intense global scrutiny could not survive that kind of unilateral influence any longer. Camilla stepped back from Charles, the truth settling over her with slow, painful clarity. The walls seemed to close in, and this time there were no moves left to make, no meetings that could change the outcome, no advisors she could call. She was alone. The breaking point didn't come with shouting. It came with a quiet collapse the moment her resolve slipped from her shoulders, replaced by the numb realization of what the monarchy had decided she had become: a burden. "You could have protected me," she whispered. Charles's face tightened. "You've protected me longer than anyone knows, longer than you ever should have. But the crown, it's larger than both of us." And in that moment, Camilla looked past him, past the frost lining the window and the long shadow of the monarchy, and understood that her true battle had never really been with William or Anne. It had always been with the institution itself, the same institution that had once leaned on her for stability and was now setting her aside to preserve its legacy. At 6:53 a.m., the palace announced her fate to the world. And in the long silence that followed, Camilla felt something inside her frozen spirit shatter, not from shock, but from the brutal truth she could no longer deny. The royal family had chosen its future, and she was no longer part of the road ahead. The hours after the announcement became the coldest, London had felt that November, a perfect mirror of the atmosphere inside Buckingham Palace, where staff moved with somber precision, their quiet actions telling the story without a single word. The decision had been made. The announcement went public, and from that moment forward, the machinery of the monarchy had to rebuild itself around a future where Camilla's influence no longer existed. Inside the palace, senior aides gathered in a private office to begin carrying out what internal documents referred to as the Winter Stability Protocol. Thick folders slid across the polished conference table as ceremonies were revised, chains of command were updated, and new communication guidelines quietly removed every reference to Camilla's advisory authority. Removing her title was not a routine administrative adjustment. It was a deliberate and final stripping of power. In practical terms, she had been pushed to the outer edges of the institution. One advisor, speaking in a whisper that was barely audible, remarked that in some ways this was more consequential than a formal deposition. "A title is symbolic," he murmured. "Influence is what truly shapes a monarchy." And now, that influence was gone. Meanwhile, William and Anne met with the house steward to review the duties that awaited them during the winter season. Their objective was simple: restore order. For weeks, confusion had seeped into ceremonial preparations as staff struggled to determine whether instructions should come from Camilla's circle or from the palace hierarchy. Now that clarity had finally returned, The siblings approached the work with their usual seriousness, part relief, part lingering sorrow. William remained composed, yet those around him could see the quiet, reflective sadness in his eyes. Despite every disagreement he'd had with Camilla, he had never wished for this outcome only for stability, only for the preservation of the legacy Elizabeth and Diana had shaped. As for Anne, she showed almost nothing on the surface. But when the room finally emptied, she paused for a moment longer than usual, as though silently carrying the weight of yet another fracture within the monarchy. At Clarence House, Charles canceled all of his scheduled engagements. The king spent the afternoon alone in his private study. Wrapped in a thick winter shawl, he read through the official reports that had led to the decision he had ultimately approved. Those close to him said he looked older and more fragile than they had seen him in years. Charles understood the logic. He understood the need to protect the institution, but understanding did nothing to soften the blow. Camilla had been his companion for decades, the one who steadied him through public scrutiny, past scandals, and the enormous expectations placed on a future king. Their relationship had survived many trials before, but never anything like this. For the first time, the monarchy was asking him to draw a line not between the crown and the public, but between the crown and his marriage. The reaction from the outside world was swift and intense. In the UK, commentators on BBC and Sky News described the announcement as painful but unavoidable, emphasizing the monarchy's responsibility to protect its integrity during a fragile and uncertain winter. Older listeners called into radio programs with mixed emotions, with some believing the monarchy had made the right decision, while others felt a deep sense of sadness, saying the royal family seemed fated to repeat the same cycles of internal conflict. Across the Atlantic, American reactions were marked by far greater shock and disbelief. CNN and CBS devoted entire segments to what they described as the psychological unraveling of a queen consort. People magazine released a late-night digital feature tracing Camilla's long journey from scandal to acceptance to this sudden and stunning collapse. A wave of emotional sympathy followed, especially among Americans over 50 who remembered Diana's era vividly and felt the old wounds of that time quietly reopening. But perhaps the clearest reaction didn't come from the media at all. It came from inside the corridors of the royal household itself. Many within the royal household felt real sympathy for Camilla. She had shown them kindness in small, everyday ways that were easy to forget until they were gone. Yet others, reluctantly and with visible discomfort, admitted they felt a sense of relief. The tension, the unpredictability, the quiet, unauthorized adjustments, all of it had created a steady undercurrent of fear over the past months. And fear has no place in a monarchy that is meant to function through stability. By nightfall, as frost settled once more over the palace rooftops, one truth stood unmistakably clear. Camilla's era of influence had come to an end not with ceremony or grandeur, but with a swift, quiet, irreversible correction. As the night of November 28 deepened, London's winter sky turned a heavy shade of gray, and the palace windows glowed faintly in the darkness. Yet inside Buckingham Palace, the air was completely still. There was no agitation, no frenzy, only the kind of silence that settles in after a family finally faces a truth that can no longer be changed. Camilla's future was sealed. Her influence was gone, and now the monarchy stood on the edge of a bitter winter, a winter shaped not only by scandal, but by the realization that even within the world's most iconic institution, power can vanish faster than snow melting in a warm hand. What unfolded was not simply an internal correction, but a deeply human story playing out on one of the most public stages on Earth. For decades, Camilla had endured scrutiny intense enough to break many others. She weathered storms of public judgment, rebuilt her image, and rose to a position many once believed she could never reach. Yet somewhere along that climb, something shifted. Ambition began to harden, and the influence Camilla once held slowly turned into control, as her desire to secure her place in history evolved into an urge to reshape the institution around herself. That may be the first lesson in this story. The higher someone climbs, the easier it becomes to forget that ladders of power are built on trust, not authority. And when that trust begins to fracture, no title, no network, and no legacy can keep the structure from collapsing. For those who have lived long enough to witness the cycles of rise and fall, today's events echo something familiar: the moment when someone begins to believe their position is guaranteed simply because they fought so hard to reach it. But the truth is rarely that simple. Whether inside a palace or within an ordinary home, influence isn't something that can be owned or held like a possession. It only lasts when it's nurtured with humility, clear judgment, and respect for the boundaries that protect everyone involved. That's why the survival of the monarchy, though rooted in power and tradition, depends on maintaining a delicate balance between rights and responsibilities, between affection and discipline. Without humility, even the strongest structures can crumble, and influence, instead of being a source of strength, quietly turns into a burden. The next lesson lies in Charles's position. The choice he made wasn't a bold one, but a painful one, a decision that families everywhere would recognize. Sometimes, the hardest path is the one that protects the whole, even when it costs you the people you love most. As a father and a husband, Charles was forced to confront a truth many aren't brave enough to face: that in order to preserve long-term stability, you sometimes have to give up what matters most to your heart. Audiences over 50 understand this tension deeply, the fragile balance between compassion and duty, between holding a family together and carrying the quiet emotional cost. And then there are William and Anne. Their role in this story reveals a quieter truth. Sometimes, those who defend tradition aren't resisting change at all, they are resisting distortion. Their actions don't come from rivalry, but from a fear that the monarchy, already fragile in the post-Elizabeth era, could fracture even further if its ceremonial foundations are reshaped by personal influence. Yet perhaps the most powerful reflection in this story belongs to Camilla herself. In the cold stillness of Mill House, where she once found refuge from the unrelenting gaze of royal life, Camilla now faces a truth that, in time, everyone must confront. Every step she has taken, from years spent in the shadows of the monarchy to the quiet decisions made behind closed doors, carries an inner struggle that few ever truly saw. When the world stops listening, the only voice that remains is the one inside. And when the noise from the outside finally fades, it is in that silence that she must face herself, acknowledging what she overlooked, the choices she never fully weighed, and what she truly wants from the life that still lies ahead. If she chooses bitterness, this winter could easily consume her spirit like a storm that never truly passes, leaving her feeling lost and isolated in the face of events she cannot undo. But if she chooses reflection, if she looks back on what has happened with clearer, more honest eyes, she may be able to rebuild something smaller, humbler, and far more genuine. That kind of humility would be the first real step toward finding peace within herself again. And perhaps what she creates next won't be grand or public, but a true sense of family built on love and understanding. And if she chooses denial, this story could return like a storm that no one is truly prepared to face. Power is temporary, legacy is fragile, and character, especially when tested under pressure, is the only crown that no one can ever take away. Every great story leaves us with questions, and this one is no different. Leave a comment with a 1 if you feel sympathy for Camilla, or a 0 if you see things from a different perspective. Your voice matters, and your opinion helps shape this conversation. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our upcoming stories and updates. Thank you for watching.